live. Here we are. Today's Thursday, June 11th, and you're tuned into NEZ SEZ, a place where musicians can come together and inspire each other to play more guitar. Thanks for being here today. We have a super, very special guest tonight. And my name is David Nesdahl, and my co-host Ty Price. Hey, Ty, how are you?
Hey, Dave. Good to see you. Good to be with our mystery guest tonight. As always, our guest tonight has performed a wide variety of responsibilities in the live music industry. He's worked as a sound engineer. He does instrument repair. He is an instrument builder. He is a rig builder, and he is a world-renowned guitar technician whose services are highly sought after. His resume includes the name of some of the music industry's biggest performers: CeCe DeVille, Reba McEntire, Bush, Neal Schon, the Smashing Pumpkins, and the king himself, Mr. Edward Van Halen. Dave and I are so happy that he's agreed to join us tonight. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Tom Weber. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
What's up, fellas?
We're so glad you're here.
What's that?
We're so glad you're here.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm here, too. Hate to be anyplace else.
That's right. I'm glad I'm anywhere.
After such a wonderful introduction.
Oh, it's all good.
Thank you. We have a few people strolling in. Dave, you want to say hello to everyone in the chat?
Yeah, sure. We have Ben Tom, Norman Perkle, my father, Richard Nesdahl, Papa Blue, Music Therapy Laz, Ben Coombs, Hugh Caldwell, Braden Berglund, Johnny Bean, my partner from my Friday night shows, Jeff Cornell. Who else is here? Well, we have 17 people, but that's all that said hello to us so far. And they'll keep on coming in for now.
Sure.
Yeah. So Mike Neeson, Headstock Harem just showed up. Tom, so you've got a very diverse resume, lots of names on your resume. I would imagine there's quite a bit of on-the-job training in your profession, because no two artists are exactly alike.
Absolutely. Every artist is different. Every environment is different, and you learn to pay attention real quickly.
I'm sure. And, even though the core responsibilities may be similar from artist to artist, each artist is unique and different. They hear things different. They play the same instrument differently. And so you're always on your toes, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When it comes down to being a guitar tech, there's a few things that you pretty much have to remember at all times. First off, guitar's measured in thousandths of inches for a reason. It's accurate. It's an accurate instrument, and it can be set up to be as accurate or inaccurate as what an artist is used to. And that leads to the second responsibility, which is understanding that the artist didn't get where they are by what you do. So you have to learn to shut up, listen, and pay very close attention to what they, you really don't want to go in and say to yourself, I'm going to show this guy everything that I know how to do. Because as soon as you start fixing things, you invariably run into something that the artist really liked and you changed it. And then you start off in trouble. So it's like the old saying goes, you were born with two ears and one mouth. Close your mouth, use both ears. My first thing with an artist is, look, I'm here to maintain what you enjoy about playing. And unless you tell me that there's something that needs to be changed, I'm not going to change anything. And then you sit back and shut up and let them go, well, and then you use both of your ears to listen to what they have to say, make notes, do what they ask you to do, check with them constantly to make sure that you're still on the same page with them and that you didn't misunderstand something. And when they go, holy crap, this is amazing. How did you do that? You make more measurements and write them down so that every single day when you hand them a guitar, it's exactly the same thing every day. And consistency is the biggest word in our vocabulary. And working with Ed, that's one of the most important words that he has in his vocabulary as well. It's got to be the same thing all the time. And why would you not want it? So,
Right.
Fortunately, I learned that early, and I still work a lot because of it.
So, who was the first that really taught you the value of consistency? When did that attribute become inherent to your job performance?
Probably long before I became a touring guitar technician. Starting out as an audio guy, audio is one of those things that has to be consistent from day to day, because unlike a guitar, which is there'll be hopefully minor changes on a daily basis, you walk into one venue and it's one thing, and the next day you get to another venue, it sounds completely different. But by the time you're finished doing what you do for a living, it's supposed to sound exactly the same if you can possibly make that happen. So understanding the details around what makes things sound the way they sound carries over into what it takes to make a guitar play the way it plays. It didn't hurt that I spent a lot of years hanging around the basement of the Gibson plant in Kalamazoo when I was a kid. Tim Shaw, Tom Murphy, the guys that didn't mind answering stupid questions from a 13, 14-year-old kid. You paid attention to what they said because you looked at what they did and go, how did you do that? Well, if you really want to know, you'll shut up and listen to the answers. So when I was learning to build guitars, that's pretty much how it went.
Those are pretty good mentors to have, right? I mean, those are some.
Oh yeah,
those are some big names.
Long list of them. There's a very long list of them.
Is that when it began for you, Tom? On the floor of a Gibson plant in Kalamazoo? Is that where the bug bit you?
Not really. I think when I was 4 years old, 3 years old, I got a wind up Mickey Mouse guitar for Christmas, and I wouldn't leave the thing alone. And my parents got me an Emily Tiger guitar, plastic bodied nylon string thing, because it looked like I was going to actually try to learn how to play when I was 4 or 5 years old. And I did. I really put myself into it as a child. And by the time I built my first guitar when I was 14. I started teaching guitar theory when I was 15. By the time I was 17, I had 85 students a week and was working full-time in a music store when I wasn't, going to school, and playing in a band, on the weekends, and then full-time, and then touring, and then, oh my, it just kept blossoming into something else. And here we are today, all these years later. So,
Tom, I'm curious in your experience when you're dealing with artists, and you're having to maintain a level of consistency among their instruments and the rig, the performance as a whole. How well do you find they can really articulate what their likes, dislikes, concerns may be, and how much of it do you have to draw a conclusion from?
Well, there is a wide variety of expressionism when it comes to artists telling you what they need or want. I have an artist that I stop in and visit here in Kentucky every once in a while. I've run sound for him when I've been home for on and off for 25 years. And I love him to death, but sometimes it's almost impossible to field, what he's trying to tell me. He was having trouble with his in-ear mix, his monitor mix at one point in time. And I asked him to describe what he was hearing that was bothering him. He says, it sounds like bumblebees. Oh, okay. Let me listen to your mix. I'm thinking, holy crap, something's broken. And it was just a little bit on the tinny side, a little on the hashy side, like you would think, a bee buzzes past your ear, and come find out his in-ears were just about shot and he needed another pair. So they were just they were distorting a little bit, and that's where the bumblebees came from. But it can be that to a person that CC DeVille, perfect example. CC takes one of his picks, inserts it between the string and the 12th fret, and if you can take a screwdriver and turn the treble side bridge post out until that pick falls out, and then turn it back in a quarter of a turn, that's exactly the way that he likes it, provided the fingerboard is absolutely straight. And that's what I use as a gauge, because that's what we found worked for him. And it's, last time we went out, he brought me a half a dozen guitars and said, I only want to take 3. And the next day, and I have to do this in character because I love him to death. He says, Tom Weber, I have a huge problem. I only wanted to bring 3 guitars, and now after you've worked on them, I can't tell any of them apart. So now we have to bring all 6, and I apologize for that. And I said, it's like, I don't care.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, I think I've always picked up dialect really well, and his voice just carried over. The first, I went to work for CC in 2004, and I picked up his voice like the first week. And I was sitting in catering with a bunch of the guys, and I was talking like that, and all of a sudden they all got really straight-faced. And I keep on going, and I'm thinking, oh crap, he's right behind me, isn't he? And I turned around and I looked over my shoulder, and he was sitting at the next table eating, and he looks at me out of the corner of his eye, and he looks back at his food, and he looks back at me and goes, asshole. And I think that was the moment that we realized that we were going to be fast friends, and he's my boy. I love him to death. He's so much fun.
Cool. Great story.
We have a great time.
That's a great story, and that impersonation is just spot on, Tom.
Right on it. Right on.
His mom says that I sound more like him than he does.
So funny.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Form of flattery. That's right. Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. First of all, when was the first time you built a guitar or thought that you wanted to be a tech, or I'd even call you a luthier because you build guitars as well?
Right. Well, the first opportunity I had to work on a guitar, I bought an SG in a yard sale that was broken in several pieces, and just started gluing things back together where the way it looked like they should go. The headstock was broken, fingerboard was popped out, neck was out of the body was cracked, and I just, with a little minor woodworking experience at 14 years old, I glued the thing back together. There was an unclaimed freight shop near my house, and they had a whole crate full of abalone shells. And I went through and figured out how to cut, abalone into shapes, and I inlaid a bunch of vines and flowers along the one border on this SG body, painted it black, and it was actually very nice. And I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was 50, 60 miles to Kalamazoo, and my dad had business in Kalamazoo fairly often. So he said, we probably ought to take this to Gibson and show it to them and see what they think, see how we've done. And so we did. And I remember this. I don't remember the fella's name, but I remember he was wearing a straw cowboy hat, and he had a string tie on with the clasp on this, or the bolo on this string tie was a pedal steel.
Oh wow!
And he's looking this guitar over, and he takes it, puts it over his knee, and flexes it, and it's like, oh crap! I'm thinking he's gonna break it, and it didn't break. And he looked it all over very thoroughly. And he said, "Young man," he said, "for somebody who's never done this before, this is pretty nice work." He said, "You might want to consider doing this." And that's where it started. So 14 years old, I became a student of what makes a guitar a guitar. And I've been trying to learn as much as I can, as often as I can ever since. The day we stop learning is the day we start forgetting stuff. So I'm open to learn new things.
Awesome. That's great.
So Tom, you mentioned working with CC DeVille. How'd you meet CC? I mean, how did that work find you?
Well, it was kind of a roundabout thing. I was referred to Jeff LeBar from Cinderella, who was on tour with Poison at the time.
This is early 2000s?
Yeah, I'm going to say probably 2000. Well, no, it's going to be earlier than that. Probably 99 or 2000. Okay. Jeff had snapped the headstocks off the two guitars, and his tech was given my telephone number from a mutual friend of ours, and he called and said he was looking for a couple of replacement guitar necks. And I said, "Well, what are you looking for?" He says, anything 25.5-inch scale that is set up for a Floyd Rose nut." I said, "Well, okay. If you had something that you were wishing for, what would that be?" He said, "Well, I know I'm never going to find them, but my guitar player broke 2 hockey stick Kramer headstock." And I said, "What would you?" I just kind of smiled to myself because I had 24 of them that had never been guitars before, original new old stock Kramer stuff. And I actually said to him, I said, what would you say if I told you that I'm looking at 24 new old stock necks just like that?" He says, "No way." So we had a really great day together. I went and got him at his hotel. He came to the shop, and we made these guitars right again. And of course, I showed up to the show the next day, and that's where I met CC the first time. And I helped his tech put a couple of guitars together for him because he had pretty much destroyed every guitar that he brought on the tour. We managed to make a couple of good ones out of the remnants of what was left of the ones that untimely demised. But and then 2004 rolls around, and I get a phone call from Junior Jones, who was their acting production manager. We were opening for Kiss in 2004, and I answered the phone, and Junior introduces himself. Of course, I'd met him before several times. He didn't know that he was talking to me at the time, which was a hoot, because he said, "I got your number from Mark Hogue, who was our actual production manager," and he said, "I'm looking for a guitar tech. I need this, I need that, I need the other thing, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Junior, I understand." I said, "I want this," and then "Junior, I know, I understand. And there's the pause, and he says, "Wait a minute." He says, "Area code 513, where is that?" I said, "Cincinnati." And he said, "Do I know you?" And I said, "Yeah, tall, bald, goatee, glasses. You write Guitar God on my backstage pass every time I come to visit." He says, "Oh, holy shit." He says, "Dude, I had no idea." He said, "I've got calls into 4 or 5 other people." He says, "Let me call CC and tell him that you're available and you're interested, and I'll call you right back." And he called me back a couple of minutes later. He says, "Can you be can you be in San Antonio tomorrow?" I said, "I can be anywhere that you can pay to buy a ticket to fly me to. I don't care." So, and that was the beginning of that. I showed up in San Antonio, and and CC and I have been a thing ever since.
I gotta ask. I mean, we sped past this part of the story, but I gotta ask, how did you come into possession of so many new old stock Kramer necks?
Well, it's a very long story.
We have time.
I'll make it as short as I humanly can. I'm sure that some of the folks that are with us at this point will recall the yellow and black stripe double neck guitar that Ed played.
Yes.
On.
Yeah, that's the yellow and black striped guitar that's Eddie Van Halen's from 1982.
Yeah, and what very few people know, and for a long time even Ed didn't know, that guitar was originally being built for me.
Wow.
I was working for a Kramer dealer. We did good numbers, and that was back in a time when you could call Kramer and get Dennis Berardi on the phone, and I did. And I told him I wanted to build a double neck, and we came up with all this, that, the other thing, and it was in process. And I'd called every couple of weeks to see how things were going. And one day I called, and Dennis answered the phone and said, told him I'd just call and just see what was going on with my guitar. And he said, "Well, Tom, you need to talk to Tony Costello. He's our new artist relations director. Let me put you on hold for a minute," which was kind of a way for him to tell me that I wasn't going to see this guitar. But Tony gets on the phone, and I told him I was calling, check on my guitar. And he said, "Well, you can see it in this month's copy of Life magazine." And I thought, I was kind of hoping to see it in a music room. So what's the story here? And he said, "Well, there's been a lot going on around here, and Eddie Van Halen has been around, and we've been doing some stuff with him, and he's coming on board as an endorsee, and this and that and the other thing." And I said, "Okay, but what you're telling me is that you gave my guitar to Ed Van Halen." "Well, yeah." I said, if it was anybody else, I'd be really pissed off. But I get it. I said, "So when do we start another one?" And he said, "Well, that's the thing. We don't." He said, "Part of our deal with Ed is that anything that we make for him, we can't make for anybody else." And I was like, "Well, that's kind of sucks." But it put everybody in a position where it's like everybody knew that it kind of sucked. Actually, it really sucked. But because to this day, I haven't ever seen the guitar in person. I've seen pictures.
Really?
That's incredible.
Yep.
I'm
hoping to. I'll get the chance. Next time I'm at 5150, I think I'm in a position to be able to ask Ed and say, "I don't know where it is. Go find it." But,
that's a pretty good. That kind of sounded like Ed too.
Well, just a little, but it put me in the enviable position of basically being able to call Kramer for years and say, "I have a customer that needs this." "Well, Tom, those are on a 6-month backlog. Hang on just 1 second." And they'd be gone for a little while, and they come back and go, "Okay, I got the body in my hands. I have one of those necks at home. I'll get the rest of the parts. I'll put it together when I get home from work tonight, and I'll FedEx it to you in the morning." And that's how they treated me for ages. It was, wow. I didn't abuse the privilege, because I was very flattered that they would bend over backwards to make sure that I got what I needed. But when they went under in 1996, I was pretty much the first guy that got the phone call saying, "Bring the checkbook and trucks." And we bought all kinds of stuff. It was a really, I think one of the best stories about that whole time that I spent there. I was very politely asked, well, I got there, and one of my buddies that worked at Kramer was the last remaining employee, and he was put in charge of liquidating everything because the two guys that owned the company at that point didn't know one end of a guitar from the other. They were in the clothing business, and they bought Kramer to see what they could do with it. And my buddy said, when we were looking at machinery, and he said, if you see a machine with a little neon sticker on it with an SS on it, those are the machines that Stuart Spector needs to continue building basses at all. And he said, and he is very respectfully asked if you can see your way clear not to buy those machines, he would really appreciate it. And so I made it, I purposely didn't buy any of them. And you fast forward to NAMM in 2014, I finally got to meet Stuart face to face. And as we're shaking hands, he looks at my badge, Tom Weber. He says, I know your name. I said, I'm the guy that didn't buy all of the machines at Kramer that had little SS stickers on them. And he goes, oh, dear God in heaven. He said, you may be the only reason I'm still in business today. And we just had a big laugh about it and talked for the longest time. And what a sweetheart of a guy. Really, really enjoyed meeting him. And he was just great. I'm very glad that I didn't buy those machines.
Jeff Cornell in the chat asks Tom, how many Kramer necks do you still have?
Not very many, because that's a long damn time ago.
Mm-hmm.
We lost quite a bit of that inventory, the wood parts inventory, because in the building that I was in at the time, in 2003, I think, there were 24 rehearsal studios on the third floor above me. And somebody decided it was a good idea to, on a Friday afternoon, pull a drinking fountain off the wall. And nobody discovered what had been done until Monday morning.
Wow.
So, I mean, there was 4 inches of water in my wood shop at that point, and boxes and boxes of Kramer bodies and necks basically were just waterlogged junk.
Mm.
It was a sad situation to be had by all, but I probably would still have some today if that hadn't happened, but we lost quite a bit of it.
Jeez.
Probably, I would say, it seems to me we figured right around 400 guitars were what we lost.
Right.
But there was still enough stuff so that, it was, there was a lot at the onset.
Wow.
Yeehaw.
It's crazy.
So does the Kramer guitars of that era, do they remain your favorite guitars, or?
I always said that, if you look at the Kramer line, they were not fancy guitars. You didn't find guitars with a flame maple top or a quilted top. As Dave is so aptly equipped, you found Kramer guitars with really cool paint jobs on them. And I really wish I would have bought one of those back in the day, because the Liberty guitar is one of my favorite designs. But now you're just showing off.
Yeah, I am.
But
well, you got it. You show it.
Yes, you do. And I feel that I've always felt that Kramer was the most utilitarian guitar ever sold. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It did it very, very well, and you could get into it without spending a ton of money. The guys that they had a great situation going on. The American Series guitars were consistent instruments. When the Focus guitars came out, you had a guitar that you could sell in a music store for $400 and make money that had a Floyd on it, and it allowed guys that couldn't afford to buy a full-blown Kramer to have something with a Floyd on it. And they were
good too.
Oh, they were good. They were.
They were good
I had
guitars.
several of them when they came out, and I remember the music store owner that I was working for when the Focuses came out. You know, our Kramer rep came in and showed us the guitars, and after he left, I went with I found the owner in the office. I said, okay, so what are we going to do about these Focus guitars? We need to have these things. He said, oh, well, we'll talk about it. I said, well, I'll tell you what, whether you pay for them or whether I pay for them, I'm going to order some. And because we're going to make money on these guitars. We can sell a bunch of these things. And he said, no, wait a minute. Of course, we hashed it all out. We ended up ordering our first batch of them. And at that point in time, we became the fourth largest Kramer dealer in the country, just selling Focus guitars. I started playing them. You know, all the guitar players that knew me around town was like, dude, that's really a good guitar? Like, you have no idea. I ended up with a half a dozen of them, and I'd sell 10, 15 of those things a week in a city that had a population of 250,000. So they really just went. Who knows what all of the reasons are why Kramer isn't around today? But you know, there's lots of rumors, there's lots of speculation, there's lots of obvious bad business decisions. But I just really feel that is an excellent guitar to have in your hands. So.
Mm-hmm. Couple of players in the chat. Johnny Bean says, love the Kramer Focus guitars. That was my first real guitar. The Chad says, Red Kramer 100 ST, first good guitar. So sorry I don't have it any longer.
Amen. You know, what was hilarious, those guitars, you didn't have to really worry about what you did with those guitars. You know, if you wanted to stripe them up. You know, and the band that I played with back then, we had a great circle of clubs that we played in, and all of us had instruments that were black, white, red. You know, drum kit was all white. So what we would do, we'd make our way around the circuit of clubs that we played, and then we'd take a couple of weeks off and peel all the stripes off of all of the instruments and restripe them differently, so that the next time we came through, it was like we bought all brand new gear. Dude, that's so awesome! Great. You guys got all matching new gear. Like,
that's great.
It's the same damn guitar. I just covered up that scratch with this striping tape, and it looks great.
Let's go.
That's awesome.
Our friend Ben Kuhn says he loves his Focus too. I've seen that guitar, Ben. That's a beauty.
Me too. Yeah.
There you go.
So Tom, this is a 1982 Pacer Imperial.
And I love that.
This guitar was the local rep's guitar. Like he'd go to go to music stores and show this guitar as his what it would be. And a good friend of mine bought it from the rep way back when, and I bought it from my buddy. And it's as clean today as it was in 1982.
Awesome.
Not a mark on it. It's got
It's
got an old prototype nut on it.
Yep.
It's got an old. It's not a prototype Floyd, but it's one of the first of the production ones.
Mm-hmm.
It came with this, and apparently someone at Kramer, that little square thing that holds the jack in, didn't come on a lot of these guitars. But when someone would maybe drill the hole a bit too big on a Friday, they would have to put these things on. They are on a couple of them, and that's what happened with this guitar. The hole was cut a little too big, so they put a jack plate on it.
Well, and I know the machine that cut that hole in those guitars, and it could vary. It wasn't real accurate.
Yeah.
It was kind of like horizontal boring with a shop smith. You know, it wasn't the most accurate way to drill a hole, but they had a jig, and most of the time it worked right. But drill bits bend, and you can wallow out a hole, and then it gets to be something that you have to put a plate over.
And lots of wine get drunk at like 3:00 on a Friday afternoon.
No. I never.
Uh-huh.
Let's see.
So,
I
oh yeah.
Dave's
Yeah, I
showing
think it's
off.
time to show. I think it's time to show something, Tom. I think you need to show some
Okay.
leg.
Let's see. I've only got a couple here, so the rest of everything is down in the basement. But this is my pride and joy right here.
Oh,
This is a
look at
Kramer
that.
Paul Dean that basically showed up on my doorstep just like this. And if you guys can read that, if I can get it focused properly, it says, "Thanks, Tom, a lot. I owe you one. Edward Van Halen, OU 812-5150."
Wow.
That's amazing. So do you
Yes,
think
it
that's?
is.
Do you think he said I owe you one because because your double neck went into his hands?
No, actually, there's a story that goes along with that. I was in 1987. I was the house audio engineer at Starwood Amphitheater in Nashville, Tennessee, and Van Halen was coming to Nashville, and we had heard stories that Ed and Alex had a disagreement about an arrangement on a song, and that they had been wrestling around the bus, and that the only casualty in that wrestling match was the White Ovation classical that Ed recorded Spanish Fly on. And it's like, oh dear God, you got to be kidding, right? Now, I don't know to this day if that's a true story or not, but that's the rumor that we heard. And I had just traded my way and into a bunch of musical equipment from a guy that included a brand new Ovation white steel string guitar that I had absolutely no use for, and I had absolutely no money in it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give this guitar to Ed Van Halen. You know, silly idea maybe, but we'll see where this goes. So I got in touch with a fellow named Robert Eva, who was our promotions director at Starwood, and told him what I wanted to do. And he said, well, I'll run it up the flagpole and we'll see what the Van Halen camp says. And he came back and he said, okay, they're cool. And so, after the show, meet me, come to my office. We'll go to the dressing room. I'll introduce you and we'll get it all figured out. So we go to the dressing room after the show, and Robert knocks on the door. He steps in. Robert and Ed, and I can't remember who was with Ed at that point, but they come out and they're introducing ourselves all around, and Ed is shaking my hand, and I'm telling him who I am, and he said, and you represent Ovation. I said, no, sir, I don't. And he said, he got a real inquisitive look on his face. He said, this is your guitar. I said, yes, it is. And he said, and you want to give it to me? I said, yes, I do. And he looked at me and why? I said, well, I know we have some mutual friends, and I know a couple of stories where you know one side and I know the other. And I was just kind of hoping that maybe we could sit down and talk for a couple of minutes. And he said, well, come on in. So we go in the dressing room. He says, he says, everybody wants something. I said, I don't need anything, just a couple of minutes of your time. And then I shared the double neck story with him. Of course, the first thing he does when we walk in the room is he sits down and he plays Spanish Fly on the guitar. And I'm 2 feet from the guy.
Wow.
And he's playing Spanish Fly. And I'm like, oh, hell, this is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life so far.
And I bet you the guitar sounded like it was the same as if it was amplified with all of his, his fingers sound just as good acoustically.
Ed channels something out of the universe that nobody else ever will. And it's him no matter what he's playing. You could hand him a ukulele and he's still going to get out of it what he gets out of it.
Yeah.
But we ended up sitting on the dressing room floor till 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. the rental company had come and gotten the dressing room furniture. And I mean, we're sitting on the floor drinking and playing guitar and cussing our wives and having a ball. At the end of it all,
Great story.
you know, at the end of it all, he handed me his phone number and I gave him mine. And, you know, of course, we really didn't stay in any kind of contact. It wasn't until the Van Halen gig showed up in 2007 that we were. Well, no, there was one other time when we were face to face. They played in Cincinnati, and I took my stepson, who was, I think he might have been 14 at the time, and I had been in touch with Van Halen's management and blah blah blah, this, that, and the other thing. And of course, you know, day before the show, I called them up and I said that I'd sent a letter. They requested that I send them a letter explaining why I wanted to get face to face with Ed, who I was, where we met, blah blah blah. Day before the show, you know, I got I called and they said, "Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Weber, there's nothing we can do for you." Okay, couldn't have told me that a month ago. So I'm at work at a music store working on guitars, and I got a phone call. You know, it's Tom Weber, line 1. And I pick it up, and and there's this voice on the other end. It says, "Tom, Scotty Ross with Van Halen. You coming to the show tonight?" I don't know. Am I coming to the show tonight? Yeah, man. I got tickets and passes for you. How many do you need? Well, I figured I wanted to take my stepson, so I made the proper arrangements, and we went to the show. Had great seats. We stayed afterwards, and of course, we're in the green room, and Scotty comes into the green room, and he's like, "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Van Halen is not making any after show, you know, at meet and greet. Everybody go home." Well, he did that a couple of times, and at the end of it, each time he'd go, "Tom, you and your stepson need to stay because I need to talk to you." And so finally, they send in, you know, the Cincinnati police come in and say, "Okay, everybody clear the dressing, clear this area except you, sir, and your son." And then Scotty comes around the corner and says, "Guys, come on this way." And we head back towards dressing rooms, turn a corner, and dressing room door flies open, and Ed comes rushing out and runs face first right into me. And I mean, just like break your nose face first, right? And he looks up at me kind of stunned, and he goes, "I know you." And my stepson I thought he was going to lose it. We got home, and he said, and he told his mom, he says, "Mom, it's not so much that, you know, my stepdad knows Ed Van Halen. It's like, but Ed Van Halen knows who my stepdad is." And I think to this day, he still has his sticky pass from that day. I don't think you'd ever get it away from him. So
That's
he was
awesome.
10 feet off the ground that day. So, very cool. Very cool.
That's great. So have you ever reminded Eddie of any of those stories while working for him?
Yeah. You know, I reminded him of us meeting at Starwood Amphitheater when we got together, when I went out to quote unquote interview for the position of guitar technician. And he says, "You know, I don't remember." He said, "Of course, I don't remember much, you know, these days, but we've had some great conversations though, and we've had some great times since I started working with him as well."
That's just awesome.
Hey Tom, what can you tell us about what that interview actually was or consisted of? I mean,
sure.
What is that process like?
It's one of my favorite stories. You know, they had been a good friend of mine, actually a good friend of ours. You know, basically got me in the door with Van Halen. They were having trouble finding somebody who could handle, you know, Ed's requirements. It's the whole idea, you know, pay attention, listen, and do what you say you're going to do. But for some odd reason, you know, things weren't clicking. So they were on like their third verse before the tour left rehearsal, and I got a call, and they flew me out and I went to 5150, and Matt Bruck, who you guys know, Ed's right hand, and I love Matty to death. He's one of my favorite people. He hands me a guitar and says, "You're to set this up the way that you think Ed would want it, and I'm to give you absolutely no information to go by." And I thought, okay then. Trial by fire, here we go.
What did he hand you, Tom? Did he just hand you a random guitar, or did he hand you something that Ed plays?
He just handed me, one of the Wolfgang models. And,
okay.
It was sitting in the studio and said, "Here you go." And I thought to myself, well, if this was easy, I wouldn't be here. So how far outside the box can I possibly make this? How difficult can this possibly be? And fortunately, I'd had a chance to meet Ed before and sit and watch him play. Obviously, it'd been quite a while before, but I'd shaken his hand, and I knew that he had a firm grip. So I thought the intonation's going to have to be set flat enough so that if he chokes this fingerboard, if he chokes these strings, the string meets the fret, that's supposed to be the note. But we all know that the string meets the fingerboard, it's not the note that mathematically might have been. But so I figured I'll set the intonation flat so that if he chokes the thing, we're still in tune. And I thought, when you strike a string, it shows up on the tuner as going sharp, and then it settles into its static pitch. And I thought to myself, okay, Ed Van Halen probably isn't going to stay in any position long enough for a guitar, for a note to float into pitch. So I'm thinking the strike of the string has to be that note. So I have to tune the guitar accordingly. And then I also have to take into consideration that he's a classically trained pianist. The strings can be in tune with one another, but unless there's temperament in the position where he's playing, that doesn't mean anything. So you pretty much have to tune the guitar for the song and the position that you're playing it in, so that when you grab a chord in that particular position, the notes are in tune with themselves. Now, by the time all of this stuff ends up happening, back then, on the tuner, the high E string, or D sharp, basically, because it was 2.5 steps down, is 14 cents flat, which means that if I pick the guitar up and I play it, I sound like a blithering idiot. But the way that Ed played at that time, I thought, okay, here we go. We're going to give this a shot. If I've blown it, it's with arguably one of the greatest guitar players of our time, and I'm proud to just have been asked to be here. So I take the guitar back to Matt. I hand it to him. He looks at me. He says, "You done?" I said, "Yeah." He looked at me. He says, "You sure?" "Yeah, I think so." "Cool. I'll take it up to the house, hand it to the boss, see what he says. Make yourself at home." I said, "Make myself at home at 5150 Studios? Are you kidding?" I sat on my hands and said, turn me loose in this place. I dare you.
That was your chance to find your guitar, Tom.
It was. It probably was probably the only chance I'll ever get. But about 10 minutes later, Matt comes back with the guitar over his shoulders, and he goes, "Dude," big smiles right out of the box. He says, "Ed has always told me that nobody on this planet, not even I, can tune a guitar for him." And he said, "I've been with him for 17 years. You're the closest guy so far." And he puts that guitar down. He hands me another one in a case. He said, "Ed wants you to take this one back to your hotel, wave the magic wand over it, bring it back tomorrow. He wants to know if you're good or if you're lucky." He says, I'll pick you up at 4:00. We'll come back here. Ed'll be here. We'll talk." And I set the guitar up the same way, brought it back the next day. And we had a night. Again, he walks in the door and he looks at me, goes, "I know you." It's like, "Yeah, you do." And, he said, "I don't remember why I know you, but I remember I know you." And And we had a long conversation, broached several different subjects, and he glances over and sees the guitar, and he said, "Is this the one?" And I said, "Yeah." And he picks it up and he holds it up to his ear and he strums one chord and he says, "It's perfect." He said, "Where have you been all my life?" I said, "On the other end of the phone, waiting for you to frickin' call me." He said, "You've only had my telephone number, since 1987." So that was kind of a humorous little dig there, but he got the humor, and we've been doing it ever since. So
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
yeah,
Man.
I think so. It's really funny because there are still times where I'll go out to California and we'll be in rehearsal and the guys will be playing and I'll just go.
How could you not be? It's like being a kid on Christmas Day. Anytime you get to hang out with that guy or be anywhere near that band, it's like Christmas Day.
Yeah. I feel like one of Santa's helpers. No problem.
We got a few comments in the chat I want to share with you. Tom 5150 Fly Guy says, "Do you think Ed changes his own strings through the years?"
I would imagine at home or in the studio, it wouldn't surprise me a bit. I mean, he's the most hands-on guy that I've ever met. You look at a lot of his guitars. He's not afraid to take a guitar apart and put a new pickup hole someplace with a hammer and a screwdriver. So changing his own strings, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. He's got, for a lot of years, I'm sure Matt was responsible for all of that stuff, but Matt has so many responsibilities with EVH products, and just, there needs to be 28 hours in a day for Matt. He's that guy. He's got a lot of responsibility.
Is there a guy that takes care of Ed's studio and stuff? Does he have like people working for him that curate his instruments or takes care of things around there?
At this moment, I'm not sure. I know Matt did it for a long time. He's taken care of things for Ed for ages and ages and ages.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I imagine if I lived in Hollywood, it'd be me, but I don't. I live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So that attribute of consistency that you were talking about earlier, that attribute that served you so well throughout your career, would you say that's the single most important thing you brought to the job, whether it be working for Ed or working for Reba or
yes. Absolutely.
That's your primary focus each and every day?
Well, it's the primary responsibility of a guitar technician. The guitar player doesn't want to have to guess what he's going to get when you hand him a guitar. If it feels exactly the same way today as it did yesterday and the day before and the day before that, they have a confidence level. They can walk out and not have to think about what they should be feeling. They can perform, they can feel. They don't have to augment what they're used to, because the consistent level is something that they've grown accustomed to, and they know that it's going to be what they expect it to be when you hand it to them. So,
Tom, do those concepts of playing requirements that you're talking about, do they evolve over the course of a tour as a player gets, as his hands may get stronger as the tour progresses?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the definition of those requirements are evolving through the course of a tour.
It can, most of the time, it doesn't, because if you get to a point where you get to a point as early as you can to allow the artist to say to you, there is something that I'd like to have different, and you pay attention to that. They tell you what it is, And you ask them for as much detail as you can and tell them, let me take care of that for you. As soon as I'm finished with it, I'll bring it. I'll bring you this guitar so that you can check it, make sure that we're both on the same page. If they go, it needs just a little bit more of this, and you give them exactly that, and they take it back and they go, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. You're building a relationship with someone that evolves into a trust that you get to a point where you really don't have to say much of anything anymore in those directions. If something does change, if an instrument isn't consistent enough on its own where it needs to be tended to on a daily basis more than another one, they'll let you know. And it's part of every aspect of what the artist experiences is your responsibility. And that's the one thing that you have to understand. If it's a matter of the high E string is so many thousandths at the 12th fret, and I want my microphone stand to be exactly here in relation to my pedal board, and I want 6 cough drops and 2 sticks of gum and 2 bottles of water with the caps off, placed in this spot in this particular orientation. You pay attention to all that stuff. If you put something out and an artist moves it, the next day you better have it exactly where they put it, because that's where they wanted it. And either you lost that in the conversation somewhere, or they've changed something. And so you really, I kind of like in my situation, when I'm doing a show, you'll find me pacing back and forth watching my guy, because I want to know every single thing that he does, and I have to try to pay as much attention to the little things as we do the big things, because to some artists the little things are more important. That's how they know you're paying attention.
So Tom, say it's 2015. And
2015.
And you wake up in the morning and Van Halen is playing the Jones Beach Amphitheater. Take us through your day when you wake up. I mean,
well,
we know that there's 9 guitars in the boat, one in the dressing room, maybe a few more in the truck. You got 15 cabinets and so many heads, pedal board, all that stuff. Take us through your day.
Well, actually, every day starts out in a hotel with Van Halen, because Van Halen does not play 2 shows in a row. So every other day is a day off. So you are either arriving at a hotel on a day off or going to the venue from a hotel. So you catch the bus. Backline guys basically have a call at 11 o'clock. If I remember correctly, I very rarely went in at 11. I like to be there at 8. I basically arrange for my work box and the guitar vault to be on the tail of the production truck, so that that's the first truck that gets unloaded. The production gear goes into the production office, but my gear comes off of the back of the truck, so that if I have something that I need to do for Ed, I can do it at 8 o'clock in the morning, not at 3 in the afternoon when everybody else gets their gear. So if there's guitars that I need to work on, I have them. And I found that to be, in 2007, I found that to be the prudent way to approach, making sure you were ready for Ed, because there could be a day where you have a lot of other stuff to do. Get the guitars done, string everything that you need to string, acclimate everything to the climate that you're in, make sure they're adjusted properly so that you are in the ballpark by the time it's time for sound check. And that way, if you get a call that says, I need to change all the speakers, you can do that and not have to worry about, holy crap, now I got to string all the guitars and do everything else that I was supposed to do, before showtime. But so any given day, I may show up at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, depending on my given personal responsibilities for the day. Catering is up. Have breakfast. Why not? If I've got a good place to work, I'll string all of the guitars early. If there's any repair work that needs to be done, anything that Ed has said he wants changed, I have the occasion to do it. The rest of the backline guys show up 11:30. We dump the backline truck. All the gear rolls into position. We unpack everything, place it on the stage, go through, patch all the gear, make sure that everything's operational so that we can do line check. Line check consists of getting all the backline techs with their instruments to make sure that everything is seen by the audio department. All inputs are working properly. Everything sounds the way that it's supposed to sound. There's no problems in the backline gear, and it's all connected properly with audio. By that time, usually around 4 o'clock, the band shows up, sound check. They run intro, first few songs, if they feel like goofing around with something. After sound check, basically dinner, fine tune, get ready for whatever it is, change clothes into whatever your show clothes are, and the show goes on. You pay close attention, and something, it's kind of fun. If you being a single guitar type of a situation, anything goes wrong with a guitar, it shows. So it's not going to be something that's just nobody's going to notice. So I have to be I got to be on my toes, in a rock trio, anything goes away, there's a big hole there. But
yeah,
hopefully everything goes the way it's supposed to. The guys come down, go up, do an encore. Show comes down, we tear everything down, put it in cases. The past couple times out, I call the pack on the backline truck. Basically everything goes where I ask them to put it. And the last tour, 2015, we came down at 10:50 every night. And the backline truck pulled away from the dock at 11:21 exactly every single night.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
That's amazing. I want to share. I want to share a story with everyone that I've already told you. It's about the Jones Beach at Jones Beach Theater show in 2015, where you and I were supposed to meet that day. But during sound check, Eddie had broke the low E saddle on his Floyd Rose during Drop Dead Legs.
Yep. And
I was in the parking lot at the time listening to the sound check, and you could absolutely hear that it had broken, because when he tried to get it back into E after being in D, or actually D, it was from C sharp to D flat, because of course they're in half step down. It didn't go back into E flat. It was way flat. It was way flat, and it sounded like Rocky Horror Show. And I remember calling you, and you're like, I got to fix this guitar before Ed wants this guitar tonight. He wants to use, of course, it was the Relic guitar, but he was like, no, I can't meet you. I'm sorry. Maybe next time around. But I'm in the bus fixing this guitar, and I don't even have a saddle for it. I got to find a saddle for it. I remember you saying all that stuff, and it's one of those last minute things that you were probably really hectic, and I'm sitting there on the phone, wasting your time while you're trying to fix this thing. So,
well, that's the way it goes sometimes. The best laid plans of mice and men.
Yeah. But the show went off without a hitch. His guitar, he played his guitar. It was in tune all night, because the only time we changed it was for the keyboard songs.
Yep.
Perfect.
Well, and that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, because when I first started with Van Halen, I mean, I got there the day before the tour started. The day before the friends and family show in LA. So it's like, okay, let's just light this guy on fire and see if he can do this, right? nothing to go by. Didn't get the chance to run the whole show. I don't know what all this is. You're going to have to feed me information as we go.
Yeah.
And Matt told me, he said, now, okay, you got to be on top of this. We've got the main guitar number 1, and then backup guitar number 2, guitar number 3, in case 1 and 2 go down, and guitar number 4 is there in case 1, 2, and 3 catch fire. So Ed probably will never touch that guitar, or and we've got the guitar, the 2 guitars for a main and a backup for little guitars, and so it's like Ed will never hold a guitar for more than 2 songs because he'll pull it out of tune. So be ready. And we hit the friends and family show, and Ed goes through the first 2 songs, and Matt's like, okay, have number 2 ready. And I'm standing at the base of the stairs ready to go up and make the change with him, and he looks over and just kind of waves me off. I'm good. And so I step back. And Matt's like, dude, he's never done that before. Well, go up, and I'm just waiting for him to call for another guitar at that point. And he played the number 1 guitar all the way till the drum solo, which was 13 songs. And that's the way it's been ever since.
Wow.
We got to the drum solo, and he's Matt looks at me, he says, dude, this has never happened before. And I don't even know what to say. So we get to the guitar solo, and Matt's very emphatic. Okay, be ready with the guitar, because we come out of this and we go right into Ain't Talking About Love, and he said the guitar's never in tune at the end of the guitar solo, and this has been a sore spot for Van Halen ever since I've been with him. And,
even before, because I remember in like the 80s, the high E string for Ain't Talking About Love was at least a half step flat.
Oh yeah. Well, it was great because Ed comes out of the guitar solo, and Matt's like, be ready. Okay, get ready to go. And he breaks into Ain't Talking About Love, and the guitar's still perfectly in tune. And Matt's jumping up and down in Guitar World. He says, dude, do you have any idea what you've done? He says, this is Van Halen history. And I'm like,
that's amazing.
Okay, it's just a job to me. It's just what I do every day. Who knows? Yeah. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
So, that's great. That's a great story, Tom.
I love it.
All these stories
are a good one for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good feather in your hat.
Yeah.
And the right guy to have it with.
Yeah.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get off the Van Halen train for a moment, and let's talk Neal Schon. How hard and how exhausting was it to put his rig together and get him rolling?
Well, Neal is a creature of change. If there's something new and interesting, he wants to use it. Huh. So there's a lot of gear involved with the guitar department with Journey. And when I came on board, it was the first 20% of the backline truck was heads and speaker cabinets that he may or may not play the whole tour. It was not unusual. He had a 3-channel stereo rig, including a 100-watt Black Star off stage with a mic on it, and then whatever heads and speaker cabinets he wanted to use on any given day. I mean, it wasn't unusual. 40 minutes before sound check, he might call and go, I think I want to play through the diesels today. So you had to dig through the truck and find the diesel heads and speaker cabinets, or the Silver Jubilee heads, or the this or the that or the other thing. And I was like, okay, you didn't want to even try to guess what it was going to be, because you invariably would guess wrong. And then we made a switch to, and all of this stuff was incorporated with a couple of fractal heads as well. And then partway through my tenure with Neal, we switched over to a new system. He wanted to go with all fractal gear and record the amps or make samples of the amps to use in the fractals. And we came up with 2 matching rigs that were 5 fractals in each rack.
Wow.
And 2 of them, one of them were Journey sounds from recordings. The second one there basically was an A rig and a B rig in each rack. Second one was the samples of all of his favorite amplifiers. And then the 5th oddball was a shared unit between the A and the big rig that handled external effects processing, because Neal felt that he had used a fractal for effects in the effects loops of the amplifiers when he was playing real amps. So in the patches, he wanted to have the effects be external as well. So it did sound different than having the effects on the amp patches in a single unit. So I gotta say, he knew what he was listening for, and he knew what he wanted to hear. Was it difficult to make that happen on a daily basis? Yeah, absolutely. Probably one of the most challenging jobs I've had. So, but we did some good work. And, talk about guitars. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Probably 48 in the building at any given time, and another 36 in the truck just in case.
Wow.
What he decided he'd like to have any given day.
So what?
Tom,
Go ahead, Todd.
No, I was just curious. I just wanted to follow up on the shift from amps to fractal. When you're going through, when you're going through a change that massive, is Fractal sending support to you? Are they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The guys at Fractal, Matt Picone, Cooper Carter. Cooper's their field guy.
Mm-hmm.
He would come out to California while I was working on this rig that we ended up with. Neal wanted it to do things that hadn't been done, and it was, my background is in signal flow or signal path and execution. If you look at gear that I've assembled, you're going to know it's my gear because I'm picky. I'm a guitar maker. I've built race cars in my time. Everything is in looms. Everything is labeled. Everything is as neat and tidy in the back of a rack as you can possibly want it to be. And I think Cooper and Matt are the guys that know like every line of code that makes a fractal work. So if there's a way for something to be done that a fractal doesn't necessarily do, those would be the guys that I would call and say, hey, Neal wants it to do this. How do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
And we could set up the rig was set up so that they could actually go in and rewrite things remotely. I could hook the thing up to my computer, go on the internet, and those guys could, log in, patch into the rack, change things that I needed changed while I was doing something else, which was a godsend to, working with you. So,
that's pretty amazing.
Not to mention that they're 2 of the nicest guys you're going to want to ever meet. They bend over backwards to make sure that, we were where we wanted to be.
That's a seismic shift that can really disrupt the concept of really disrupts the concept of consistency when something like that happens.
Oh yeah.
I guess it constitutes a new type of consistency. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because consistency still has to be there, but it's the concept, the conceptual execution of what needs to be there is, in a situation like that, if it's never been done before, guess what? If there's a bug in it, we're going to get it.
Yeah.
So, and fortunately, very seldom did we ever run into something that made us go, uh-oh, so, and of course we always had a redundant backup. We wouldn't necessarily change both rigs. If we knew that it worked, like if we could go to the B rig and it would be like it was yesterday, if something that was supposed to be there today didn't work in the A rig. So
yeah,
well, that's good.
Redundant backups. And
Yeah.
that rig had redundant backup over redundant backup. It was ridiculous, but not, in a situation where you may find yourself, if something goes wrong, you better have an answer for it. And there was always something. So,
Dave, Larry Mitchell shared a story like that with us when he was saying always have a backup.
Yep. Oh yeah. Believe me, I know. I shared a story that I was in a wedding band for 25, 26 years, and we were doing like a festival in a band, like a band shell thing, and something happened. I had a Bradshaw rig at the time, and some sort of power surge happened, and the whole amp went down. Nothing. I didn't get my pedal board had nothing. I couldn't change channels, but everything was still lit up, but nothing was working. No matter what I did. Luckily, I had a Fender Vibrolux 212 in my car, and I finished the show with the 212 amp. So yes, always take a second amp with you.
Oh yeah. Well, the fun thing about the rig that I built for Neal was the initial concept was to make his B rig into what the original A rig on the tour ended up being when I was finished with it, because he asked for a bunch of modifications. I kind of made it my own, and they said, every day it was like, holy crap, it's better than it was yesterday. At the end of the tour, it was a matter of what would it take for you to come to California and turn his B rig into the same thing as the A rig. So, well, if I've got all this stuff that I need, take 3 days, get 4 on the outside. Great, that's what we'll do. Well, somehow Neal found out that I was going to be there, and second day started showing up with armloads of gear saying, I want to try this. 3.5 months later, I'm still in California working on this rig.
Mm-hmm.
Finally got him, probably 2.5 months into it, finally got him to commit to what we were going to do, and I was able to start executing. And we built, I can't remember which guitar magazine it was, but they dubbed it the most technologically advanced guitar system on the planet.
Wow.
And
yeah,
we built two matching rigs because we were going to Asia, and we couldn't fly the gear from one country to another and depend on it getting there. So we had to leapfrog identical rigs. But once we got back to the States, that gave me basically 2 complete racks. I had in 2 racks, I had 4 complete redundant systems that I could switch back and forth either via hard switch or via MIDI to all of the 6 or 7 outputs that we had assigned everything to within the racks. And the audio guys wouldn't know when I switched from one to the other because they all sounded exactly the same.
That's great.
That's amazing.
There's nothing cooler than having the audio guys say, okay, let's check the backup. I'm on the backup. I'm switching back and forth between the main and the backup now. And again and again and again and again. It's like, dude, they sound identical. Holy crap.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. Nothing better to come from an audio guy to a guitar guy than that.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. So what would you say is your the artist that is the easiest to work with?
I would say at this moment, probably Jim Kimball from Reba McEntire's band. He is the guy that I take care of during the show, and he's probably the most easygoing human being that you will ever imagine.
What makes him easy?
His attitude in general. I mean, he walks in, it's like, I know it's going to be fine.
Can you take us through his rig?
it's very much simplified at this point. He plays a little electric guitar. He plays a lot of acoustic guitar. It all goes through a Kemper, and he's written programs for the Kemper that have replaced all kinds of gear that he started out with. He had an acoustic guitar rig that was, a pendulum preamp, and then this and that and the other thing, and it was really convoluted. Sounded amazing. And then he got the Kemper and started thinking to himself that maybe he could write a program that sounded like that and do the digital samples with the Kemper, with the gear, along with the gear that he had. And he came up with some stunning acoustic guitar sounds. And it all works, and he changes it. And I really just have to be there for just in case.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in Reba's band is pretty much that way. They are all very, very confident in what they do and confident in what we do. And of course, it doesn't hurt that there's 9 of them. If something goes down in a 9-piece band, unless it's the drum set or the bass player, somebody can cover most of it.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So, but we don't have that. I'm gonna knock on wood. We don't have technical difficulties really with Reba's guys. Everything, we do it right, and build it right in rehearsal. You won't be chasing it on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much the way that we try to do everything. So, the guys in the band deserve that. Reba definitely deserves that. She's I got to interject here. You see Reba on TV, and a lot of people ask me, is she really like that? And the only answer I can give is that she's every bit as nice as you'd hope she'd be. She's a stellar individual, and we are all very proud to work for her.
And her smile lights up a room. I mean, she's got a bazillion-dollar smile. Yeah.
Yep. And she will not, she'll come out and be on her way to the stage, and she will not pass any of us without at least reaching out and putting a hand on your shoulder and smile and say, "Hey Tom, how you doing?" On her way to go do her.
It's a beautiful thing.
That's cool. Yeah.
So your guy that you work with Reba, how many guitars in his boat, and how often do you have to change strings on them?
Well, it depends on what we're doing. If it's a Reba headline show, there are 4 electrics and 4 acoustics. If we do 4 residency runs at Caesar's Palace per year with Brooks and Dunn, which is a completely different setup. I think he plays electric guitar for 7 or 8 songs early in the show. And then he plays his main acoustic guitar for like 22 songs in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes to a detuned guitar for 2 songs, and then back to the main acoustic for 2 more, and the show's over. So
that's a lot of songs.
It's a lot.
What's that?
That's a lot of songs.
It's a lot of songs. It's definitely a long show in Vegas, and it's very entertaining. We have a blast doing it. And I think, I literally could go to Walmart and a movie between my 2nd and 3rd guitar change. But I think there's so much going on during that performance that if there was a problem someplace, I think the intent was to keep me free so that I can help. And I'm glad that the guys on the crew, trust me that way. I can't say enough good things about those guys. They're all just wonderful people.
Tom, do you find that art? Speaking of residencies versus travel on the road, do you find that residencies are easier on the artist in terms of rest and flexibility and longevity and that type of thing, rather than the hustle and bustle of travel?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, now in Reba's situation, Reba's got her own plane. So, you know, she comes off the stage, and whether we're on the road or whether it's, you know, it's Vegas, she has the ability to say, I think I'm flying home tonight, you know. So she has a lot more choice than an artist that doesn't have that capability. But I think, you know, definitely for us as crew guys, you know, set it up and leave it. I think there's only been one time that we've been in Vegas where we needed to tear things down between shows because there was something else in the venue on a day off. But most of the time, it's set it up, leave it, or you got to move a little something because something's going on. But it's really a much more restful situation. I mean,
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning, you do what you want to do. You know that lobby calls at 4:00, and you go in and you string guitars if they, you know. And in that situation, I'll string the main acoustic guitar, you know, every day. I'll string if he doesn't play a backup guitar, I'll string his detuned guitar, you know, every third show because he only plays 2 songs on it. The electrics I'll change every other show. The main electric is, I mean, he plays 7 or 8 songs on it, you know, per show consecutively, and it really doesn't need it. So it's really not a bad gig, but you've got to be paying attention all the time because
Sure.
it's really important to stay on top of everything that's going on stage with
Sure.
people.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Anybody in the chat have any questions for Tom?
There was a question where a viewer wanted to demystify an urban myth. Norman Perkle. Tom, maybe you can weigh in on this urban legend. Norman says, I read as a kid that Ed would boil his strings. Is that an urban legend, or does Ed request that his strings actually be boiled?
I have never boiled strings for Ed Van Halen. It would not surprise me if at some point, you know, especially in the studio, if Ed had the time or the wherewithal to get a particular sound out of a string by boiling it. I know it's not uncommon for like old school guys that really like worn out strings. Some of the country guys that I know won't change strings until they absolutely have to. I've had plenty of customers in the shop that have said, "Oh no, put the same strings back on it. You know, I don't change strings until I break them." I know a bass player. I know a bass player here in Kentucky that's probably been playing. I've known him 27 years, and I know for sure that he's changed strings 3 times in that period. I can't say that he's done it anymore because he probably would have called me to do it for him.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a long time on. But for bass, I can understand that, and especially if you're using flat wounds. Flat wound strings, they're dead to begin with, so they can last forever.
Our good friend Ben Coombs has a question. He says, who had the most guitar changes during a set? Which artist had the most guitar changes during a set?
9 Inch Nails.
Oh, wow.
Definitely 9 Inch Nails. And I
think were you working with Robin on that tour?
Yeah. That was let's see, there were 26 guitars, 2 baritones, banjo, mandolin, lap steel, violin, 4 song flutes, anywhere from, I don't remember the number of songs necessarily. There were 69 songs in the play book, and I did all the effects cues as well. So there were guitar changes for every single song. Some songs there were multiple guitar changes because of tunings, and anywhere from say 230 to 325 effects cues during a show.
Wow.
And the bad part is I didn't even get to go to rehearsal. I had to take it all from board tapes and some sparse notes that the guy that I replaced left me, and the gear didn't work. And oh, holy crap! What a nightmare that started out to be. But we got it all functioning. We got everything the way that it was supposed to be. And my first day meeting everybody in the band was a show day in Brazil at a festival. Oh my! And a rig that was about ready to catch fire at any minute. But we managed to make it through. And I didn't I had written all of my cue sheets going by the lead vocal line as to where effects cues would come in.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until we did sound check that I realized that I was sharing an in-ears mix with Robin, and the only thing that he got was his guitar and his background vocal.
Oh wow!
So for the next year, I had to count the show. You know, taking into consideration the latency between the time that you push the button and any particular effects processor would produce the sound that you wanted. If you had to have the sound on one, you know, on the count of one, it may be on 4, it may be on 4E and it may be on 1. You know, it was just from song to song, you were counting continuously while retuning, you know, all of these instruments, and then hoping that they wouldn't go into destruction mode and throw a guitar through the video wall. So that's definitely a crucible gig right there. If you can do a 9 Inch Nails gig, you can do anything.
He's a great guitar player. Robin's a great guitar player too.
Wonderful guitar player.
So yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So of all the artists that you've worked with and worked for, is there any one guitar that you thought was like the oh my god guitar?
Oh yeah. Last summer, I was out with Bush working with Chris Traynor, and there was a 63 SG Junior in the vault when I got out for rehearsal. And he says, "Yeah, I'm just going to bring that along." He said, "I'm thinking about playing. You know, we got a song that he plays slide on." And he said, "I want to try it for this slide part, see what it does." He said, "I've had it around the house for a couple of years. Give it a shot." And you know, handful of shows into the tour, he said, "You know, let's try that SG tonight." So I got it all set up, strung the way that he wanted it to play slide, and handed it to him for the song, and sounds great. It wasn't really. It wasn't a song that basically brought the guitar really forward in what its potential would be. And when I went to change guitars with him, he waved his main guitar off. He said, "I'm going to hang on to this one, see what it sounds like for the next song." And he kicks into the next song, and I've got a dumbfounded look on my face, and he's looking at me with a dumbfounded look on his face, like, holy shit, what is that? It was the most incredible guitar sound that I'd ever heard in my life. Head and shoulders above any guitar that I've ever heard anybody play. Any note that it was like that guitar was meant for him, because every time he would play a particular note, it would, you know, he'd be going for a little bit of feedback, and it would come in just perfect. And he'd move a little bit, and it would change pitch. And it just, everything that came out of that guitar fit exactly where the notes should have been in the song. And there was nothing wrong with the songs the way that he played them with his other guitar, but this one just knew.
It's magic.
What's that?
It's magic.
Oh yeah,
it's a magical thing.
Absolutely stunning. We named the guitar the Angel because one of the other techs, you guys know Takumi. At
Mhm.
at the end of that show, Takumi came across the stage. He was teching for Gavin, and he comes across the stage and he goes, "Dude, that guitar is a gift from God," and hence the Angel. And it's the most stunning sound that I've ever heard,
Mhm.
bar none. And it's an SG Junior. Who knew? What those guitars sell for back then?
80
Less than
bucks.
$100.
$80. 80.
Oh yeah, there you go.
80 bucks.
How do you manage to switch guitars and I don't notice? You're stealthy that way.
I'm a gift from God.
Awesome.
Because NEZ says that's why.
That one?
This guitar, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you it's quick. It's not so quick. A friend of mine that I went to high school with, we didn't really talk much, but we'd say hello from one time or another. And after high school, of course, you don't talk to any of your friends from high school. Last year, he contacts me because he watched one of these shows that I was on. He's like, "Hey, I still live in Glen Cove. Do you set up guitars?" I'm like, "Yeah, I fix guitars and I build guitars and blah blah blah." He says, "Would you mind fixing one of mine and setting it up for me?" I said, "Sure, come on over." So he comes over like the next day, and he brings this guitar. It's in a case, in the original case, and I look at him like, "Oh my God, that's pretty amazing." So what do you want done with it? He says, "Well, I'd like the action a little lower, new set of strings, and how about a new set of tuners? But can you do it without making the holes bigger or putting Grovers on?" I said, "Sure, yeah, I can get the same exact tuners, but brand new," which is what these are, because the other ones, the old ones were like mummy feet, which is what they call them, all shriveled up and
all shriveled
up. So
yeah,
mummy feet. So I got the guitar done in like a couple days. As soon as the new tuners came in, it was like a couple days from Stu Mac. I got the guitar done right away for him, and he came over and played it, and he's like, "Wow, that's great." I said, "Well, I got to tell you, if you ever sell this guitar, please give me the first right of refusal, because this guitar is special." I couldn't stop playing it after I set it up and played it. I like to play the guitar for a day just to make sure it wants to stay as is and it wants to be a guitar. So I played it, and I was like, "It's absolutely the best guitar in this house." And I said, "If you ever want to see," he said, "Well, I'm never going to sell it, but why don't you hold on to it? Play it." I said, No. I just set this guitar up for you and made it perfect for you. Take it home, play the guitar. I tell you what, if you get sick of playing the guitar after a while, and then if you want to lend it to me, I'd more than be happy to borrow it. So in December, this all happened in October. December, he says, "Yeah, I'd like to come over and hang. I'll bring that SG if you want to borrow it." I said, "Okay." Still have it. And he came over last week, and I said, "Would you like your guitar back?" He says, "Looks like it's got a good home here. If I ever want it back, I'll take it back. Just hang on to it. It's like on permanent loan. But if I want it back, I'll just take it back." I said, "Okay," because I play this guitar every day.
And on the inside, Dave is going, "Yes."
Yeah, really. But there will be a day, I guarantee you, there will be a day where he'll be like, "No, I want my guitar back." So it's okay, because of that, I have another P90 guitar made by Nags that I'm also in love with. It's fantastic. A bit bigger piece of mahogany, but fantastic guitar. And this is the guitar that made me fall in love with P90s.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
there's nothing like P90s in a slab of mahogany. It just works.
Yeah, I don't even care. I don't even care about the noise that they make. I don't care. I'm not. It's it's all part of the song. If you ask me, if that noise isn't in a song, it ain't. The song is different.
Part of it. Hey Tom, we got a couple of questions. Hugh Caldwell, a regular viewer. Thanks for being here, Hugh. He says, "Where does Tom buy his tools?"
As a tech, you'd be surprised on at how many things you don't get called to do on the road. I mean, I can carve you a guitar with a cabinet scraper. Do you get a call to do that on the road? No. Well, it can happen, but not usually. do you need to refret a guitar on the road? Probably not. I've never been asked to do it. God knows I've refretted thousands of guitars. A lot of the tools that are necessary to maintain guitars on tour are pretty much bread and butter stuff. So I've got a lot of Craftsman tools. I've got a lot of tools from Stuart McDonald Guitar Shop Supply.
Yep.
I've got a lot of tools that I've made myself. Things that weren't around when I needed it back then. Now you've got, there's a catalog for just about anything guitar work related to Stu Mac. But there are tools that I have that they now have that I've had longer. So you go with the most utilitarian stuff. If you want to get fancy, I mean, I've got 3 850-pound work boxes full of guitar tools. I have everything that I could possibly need. But most of that stuff is, it ends up being kind of a comfort thing for the artist. My guy can do anything out of his work box, and they love that. I probably won't have to, but yeah, I've CC DeVille had his dressing room guitar with him on an airplane, and he had it in a gig bag, and they made him check it, and of course snapped the headstock off of it. And this is a GMP single cutaway red, white, and blue American flag bass boat glitter paint job guitar.
Flying V?
Wonderful instrument. What's that?
Was it a Flying V?
No, it's a Les Paul type guitar. His dressing room guitar is not a V because he wants to be able to sit down and play it. And, but a great guitar. And of course, snapped the headstock right off it. And I had to glue it back together on the road. And it was an endeavor. He didn't snap the headstock right completely off. He snapped it through. And I had to go through, of course, between wood clamps and I had some nylon string that I ran through the two. I wasn't getting enough clamping pressure to hold the crack shut, so I basically put an eyelet in place of the rear strap button. Put a towel over the edge of the guitar, ran string back and forth several times between the two end tuner holes and the rear eyelet, and took a drumstick and just wound this like a tourniquet until I got the tension that I needed to hold the headstock shut or closed as tightly as I wanted it, in conjunction with the trigger type clamps that I had. And then where the paint had chipped away, it was a black back guitar, so I filled the places where the paint had chipped with a black Sharpie and super glue, and sanded it all out down to 2000 grit, and then I polished it with a hotel towel and toothpaste until you could see yourself in it. And literally, you could not see where the break had been.
That's amazing.
I handed it. What's that?
That's amazing. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah, we just make it up as we go sometimes.
MacGyver. You're like MacGyver.
Well, you have to. I know how I do it in the shop, but if I didn't have a 16-inch buffing lathe and all of the clamps and the this and the that and the other thing and spray booth and whatever else. So got to make it up as you go. And I handed it to him, and he was dumbfounded with it. And of course, a week later, he flies again, and the airline snaps the neck in half at that point. I'm like, okay, now it needs a whole new neck. And Dan over at GMP, basically just put a new neck in it, refinished it. We still have the guitar today, but my work would have lasted much longer if he wouldn't have taken it on another airplane.
Man. So in CC's voice, tell us what he said to you when you gave him back the guitar.
I don't recall right off the top of my head, but there is one that I do remember. Actually, my first day with him. We're doing production rehearsal for the 2004 Kiss tour, and in rehearsal before I got there, again, this was a gig that I was approached to do the day before the tour started. I had no benefit of rehearsal whatsoever. They knew where all the gear was going to be set up, so in rehearsal they had made sure to do that. And the first day of production rehearsal, they get to a point after we'd worked through all kinds of bugs in CC's rig. God, it was a rough one. The first day, there were 10 channels of noise reduction in the guitar rig, and if you turned any one of them off, it buzzed so bad that you couldn't even stand next to it. And
Man,
I've changed the signal path. You know, he was reluctant to let me do things, but at first, but I got him to agree to let me do this in rehearsal. And of course, he walks out on stage and he turns the guitar up, and it's not working. What do you mean it's not working? I don't hear anything. Just play something. And he hit a chord and just about blew him out of his shoes. It's like, okay, it's working. Yeah. Well, we get to one particular song, and it's in a different key than all of the rest of them. And he gets to one particular part, and the guitar rig just starts to howl. It's just this, and he turns the volume down on the guitar, and it's still howling. And it's like you see, this is why the other guy got fired. He couldn't figure things out like this. This is unacceptable. I said, hold on a minute. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is a mechanical recyclative loop here. There's something causing something to vibrate here. And he's playing through these two old Shure wireless units that I just kind of guessed hadn't been in for service for a long time. And there was a space in the rack under the wireless units. And I walked over to the rack, first place that I looked. I walk over to the rack, and I just took my fingertips, and I just barely touched the bottom of the bottom wireless unit, which was the one that he was playing through. And the sound goes away. And he goes, "He's a freaking genius." It's like, I'm going to say, no, he's just really lucky today. So, but that's how our relationship has been since day one. We get where we need to go. We find something that we need to change, and we've been really lucky just finding it and going on with it, and having a smile and a laugh and a good show. And Tom Weber, I'm not going anywhere without you. Well, that's great. I'm not planning on having you go anywhere without me either. So,
Tom Weber.
That's good. Tom got another question from Crazy Cook 678. He says, "What kind of pick did Ed use?"
Well, Ed, since I've been with him, has been using the Herco nylon picks.
Yep. 72s.
60s.
What's that?
60s.
Yeah,
0.60.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's the I can't play with one for the life of me, but that doesn't matter. It's his deal.
The cool thing about those thin picks is the pick scratch. That's ultimately the best thing about you, because the thicker the pick, you can't get a good pick scratch out of it. Those thin ones, especially, to get them to sound like Ed's, you got to use thinner picks for that.
Yep. And the texturing on those, Billy Duffy told me he doesn't play with the point of the pick. The Herco has that knurled part so that you can hang on to it.
Yeah.
He plays with the rounded corner. That's how you get that at the beginning of the note.
Yeah, the edge as well. The edge does that as well.
Yep. Wow.
Billy Duffy's Hercos are even thinner than 0.6. I think his are 0.5.
that may be right. That may be right. It's been a while since I've worked with Bill, but and I talk about it. Somebody who's got an incredible tone and an incredible feel live. Billy Duffy live is a monstrous guitar.
Yes, he is. And just a brutal guitar tune. I mean, just amazing
Yep.
guitar tune. Tom, when you were I want to ask you a question about Billy. When you were working with him, was he still using the Roland the JCM 120?
JC 120?
JC 120.
JC 120. Sorry.
When I got, that's another one of those gigs that just really has, that's a story in and of itself. I was coming home from doing a run with Reba, got off the airplane and got a message from one of the roadie sites. I think it was BobNet. Looking for guitar tech, tour leaves out of Nashville, must be local, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And I thought, well, I'm not local to Nashville, but I've got an 800-pound workbox sitting down there. So if the tour leaves out of Nashville and my gear's already there, maybe that's local enough. So I responded, sent my resume, and about 10 minutes later, I get a text message from a friend of mine who was their production manager at the time. He said, "Can we afford you?" And I texted him back and I said, "No, probably not. But right now it's the difference between this and unemployment. I'm negotiable." And it turned out it was going to be like 10 shows and no big deal. They were looking for somebody to handle stage right, which was bass player, guitar player, and then Ed had his tech. And I thought, sure, no problem. And I said, well, the band's not going to, they're looking for somebody local, so they're not going to pay to fly you down here. I said, no problem. I'll have my wife drive me down and I'll meet you down there a couple days early and we'll look at the gear, get things loaded up, and everything will be good. Okay, awesome. Well, we're on our way to Nashville, about 2 hours out of Nashville. And my phone rings and it's the PM and he says, "Tom, I shouldn't have to make this phone call and I certainly shouldn't have to make it to you, but management has decided that for stage right, they're going to hire a local guitar tech every show because it really doesn't require, somebody of your caliber, and it'll be a lot cheaper. They're going to pay like $100 a day." I said, "Oof, for $100 a day, I'll turn around and go home." He said, "Yeah, I figured you'd say that." He said, "Dude, I don't even know how to say I'm sorry." I said, "It's not your fault. You didn't do it. No big deal." So, we ended up continuing the trip to Nashville and making a couple of days out of it and turned around and went home. Well, a couple of days later, obviously the tour starts, and I think they had one or two shows under their belt. And my phone rings and it's their PM again. He said, "Tom, I'm in a really bad spot right now. And I wouldn't blame you if you told me to just go screw myself. But we couldn't find a local tech for yesterday's show. So Billy's guy had to set up all of the band gear except for the drums. And today he walked off the bus and went to the airport and didn't tell anybody." He said, "We have a show tonight and I need a guitar tech." And I said, "Well, he said, I've already spoken to management and I've told them that there's only one person on this planet that I would trust to do this gig with nothing to go by. And, oh yeah, it's the guy that you screwed 2 days ago." And they said, "Whatever it takes. So, what will it take for you to come out and handle this?" I said, "Well, I'll do it for the money we were talking about, and no problem." He says, "You sure?" He says, "You could ask for just about anything you want at this point." "Dude, I'm not here to screw you." He said, "Great. Can you be on an airplane in 2 hours?" Well, I'm at my shop. I'm covered in sawdust at this point. It's like, okay, I'll have my wife grab my bag. I'll grab a hotel room between here and the airport so I can get a shower, and I'll get on the plane. I get there. I get off. I get out of the cab that brings me from the airport, and all of Bill's gear is sitting on the stage, still in the cases. He's not there. There's nobody to tell me how it goes together because nobody knows. And the PM says, open everything up, put something together that works, and we'll figure it out later. Bill's not going to be here until right at showtime, and he's just going to have to understand. Right at showtime, here he comes. I've got a guitar sound. It's functional. I don't know if it's right or not. And he comes on stage. I hand him a guitar. He plays a couple songs. He comes back for a guitar change. He says, that one could use a little more stretching. Yes, sir, got that. And that was the only conversation that we had the whole show. And he finishes the show, off he goes. Next day, same thing. He's not there. I don't know if it's right or wrong. So I'm just going to put it together. And we did a show, and off he goes. Okay. He's not yelling at me, so I guess that's good. You know, third day, he's on site on his bus. And I get a call on the radio. Says, Tom, Mr. Duffy would like to see you on his bus right away. Okay, I'll be right there. And everybody on the crew is like, okay, here it comes. Now you're going to get it. It's to get called to the bus first thing in the morning. Here we go. Welcome to the cult. Like, So I walk out. I walk up on the bus. I sit down. He comes out of the back lounge. He's not saying anything. Pours himself a cup of tea. Sits down in the front lounge, and he's stirring his tea. And I'm thinking, here we go. And he looks at me. He says, evidently, I've never had a real guitar tech before. The guitars are brilliant. The tone's amazing. I couldn't be happier. And holy crap, you know. So we finished the 10 shows, and about every 6-8 weeks, you know, for the next year and a half, he calls me up, just touching base, you know, next time we go out, you still interested in working with me? Absolutely, no problem. You know, as long as I know enough in advance so I don't book something else, I'd be happy to work. So they get a tour going. I get out to California for rehearsal. He says, you go to the locker. You pick what gear I'm going to play through this year. And so I picked we had a couple 100-watt Friedman heads, 412 Marshall cabinets, the JCM 120, and Box AC30. And I set it all up in an array that I thought would work for me. I dialed in a good tone that I was happy with. He walked into rehearsal. I think they rehearsed for 4 days. He never touched a knob. And I thought, okay, this is good. We went out. We did the first couple of shows, and you know, sound check. I'm up on stage, and I'm standing where he's standing, and I'm looking at the rig, and I'm listening. And I go back, put a little of this in, put a little of that in, take a little of this out. And I noticed that he's looking at me like, the hell are you doing on my stage? You know, a third show in, he comes to me and he says, I finally realized what you're doing at sound check. He said, my rig has sounded exactly the same 3 shows in a row. He said, if I'm ever in your way, just give me a shove. And my last show with Bill was we were opening for Guns N' Roses in Mexico City, and before the second show that we did, he came to me and shook my hand. He says, no matter what anybody ever says, this gig is yours anytime you want it. And I'm very proud to be able to say that we had that going on.
That's great.
There are a lot of stories about how difficult it is to work with Bill, but again, it's nobody listened. Nobody paid attention to what he was saying. And there were occasions where he would scream bloody spit and murder at the rest of the band and turn around and look at me and go, and start playing guitar. It's like, everybody's like, okay, who is this guy and what have you done with Billy Duffy? Because he doesn't yell at you. He just yells at me more.
That's fantastic.
He's gone through quite a bit of gear, but he's always had a lot of consistency to his tone. I mean, he introduced the matchless, and then were you when you said that he gave you the reins to design the rig? Were you were you the one that took the matchless out and put the Vox in? Yep,
I was.
Okay.
I didn't. The matchless for Bill's tone was, I don't want to say darker, but it was kind of mottled. It wasn't, there wasn't the clarity in the frequency range that amplifier was known for. And I felt that it was detracting from what he was actually playing. You couldn't really understand what he was playing. Once we put the AC30 in there, I gave him a little heavier sound out of the Friedmans, and tempered the clarity. The one great thing about Bill is that he knows which one of his effects pedals is going to hit which amplifier in a manner that's conducive or complementary to what he wants to play. And I think he's absolutely brilliant in what he's capable of doing with the pedal board, just knowing how the amps are going to react. And we looked at all of we used each one of those amplifiers to create a different layer, almost like a three-way sound system. You know, the JC120 has a particular pristine clarity on the top end.
Yeah.
There's a certain throatiness that comes out of the AC30, and everything guttural and earth moving, you know, comes out of the 412 cabinets and the Freedom heads. And then he knows, if I hit this pedal, I know what I'm going to get. It's going to hit the JC120 differently than it hits everything else, and really make the JC jump out. Whereas if I hit another pedal, it makes the AC30 jump out more. And he just was brilliant with how he picked those things. There wasn't a night that went by where he wouldn't play something. I go, holy crap! I wish I'd played that.
I know he's so great. Last question about Billy. What did you put inside those Gretches to keep them from howling on stage?
Road case foam.
Road case foam.
Yep.
That's brilliant.
Lots of road case foam. And we had a great show. We were playing at Austin City Limits Live, and Eric Johnson's tech was there, and such a hoot, because after the show I'm putting guitars away, and you guys, I've gotten away with a couple of colorful explicatives. You guys don't mind a couple more?
No, we're fine. You can curse all you want.
You good?
If I'm going to quote accurately, Eric's tech was a fellow named Dustin Sears, and Dustin's just awesome guy. Love him to death. He was out with Kenny Wayne Shepherd opening for Van Halen. And, that's how we met one another. But I was out doing this cult gig, and at the end of the show, he comes into Guitar World and he goes, "Fuck you," and I said, "What did I do?" He says, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you." And I said, "Okay, I'll play your silly game. What's that for?" He said, "Dude," he said, your boy played that Gretsch for 6 consecutive songs and used the whammy bar. And when he handed it back to you, it was still perfectly in tune. Fuck you.
Yeah. Trials and tribulations of a Bixby.
Yep.
And Gretches, because I own one, I know they are like sponges. They play like a sponge. They don't play. Yep. They don't have a spank that a solid body has, and even most hollow bodies. Like if you play a Gibson hollow body, still got some sort of a spank.
Yeah.
But when you play a Gretsch, it's like a sponge. It's like very, very spongy. It's not. Yep. Nothing is absolute on it. It's very weird. You got to play those guitars very differently.
It's like Billy said. He says the Gretsch is a man's guitar. He says
It
you
certainly
have
is.
to manhandle it to get anything out of it. And
I'll certainly let you know when I become one.
Yeah. Well, I always thought that it was so much fun watching the reactions of the people in the audience at a cult show, because Bill has some of the best Les Pauls that I've ever heard. He's got some benchmark guitars, and he'd play the first half of the show on Les Pauls, and it would be tone and tone and tone, and then he'd go to the Gretsch, and I used to love to watch, because it's all guitar players in the first 5 rows,
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it was, I got to a point where I could read lips really well, because it's either oh my God or holy shit.
Yeah.
He'd start playing those Gretches, and that tone would come out of there, and everybody would be like, it's just stunning.
It's amazing.
You listen to the records of the Cult, and the guitar parts are there, but you go to see the Cult live, and it really tells the tale about what their playing is all about, and what Bill's ability is all about. It doesn't show through on the records like it does live, and he's
amazing.
He's just a stellar player live.
Oh, he's a fantastic player.
Him.
Yeah, great guitar player.
Yeah.
Any final questions for Tom?
We've got several people in the chat. They're just saying thank you, Tom. Killer Road Stories, please thank him for all of us, says Bent Tom. So many amazing stories. Great show tonight, says John BL 5150. Ben Coombs echoes those sentiments.
Awesome.
Wayne says great stories. Fruitcake Tony, this has been a great show. Awesome stories.
Awesome. I'm
Tom,
glad everybody was able to be here.
Tom, I chose to stop here because I would like to get you on for a part 2 at some time if you're not on the road.
I'd be happy to. We
Awesome.
can even do it on a day off if I am on the road. I don't care. This is fun.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
There's so many stories.
You're very generous.
I know. We can be on here till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, which I have no problem with. But then I'll be a mess at dialysis tomorrow.
God, we can't have that.
No,
can't have that.
No.
Well, I thank everyone for putting up with me. I enjoyed it. This is the first one of these I've done. I'm hoping we can do plenty.
Well, we're honored that you joined us tonight. Yeah.
Real quick though, show us that second guitar that you had that you wanted to show us, and tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll say goodnight.
This is my baby. This is I don't know if it. Well, you can see. How do you turn these things to get them right in the camera?
That's it, just like that.
This is a very nicely ribboned, solid mahogany Kramer Night Swan that was part of this stuff that I got from Kramer. And this body, this was a guitar that was white. When I got it, evidently somebody must have been their first day in the paint shop at Kramer, because they sprayed about 100 Night Swan bodies with a single coat of white polyester. And polyester is a finish that has to be, you have to get it all on the guitar the first time. You have about 7 minutes between coats before it sets up to a point where you've got to sand it off and start over, or you've got to run the risk of recoating it and potentially have delamination problems. But so I had a few of these, and I decided one day to assemble one for myself, and I just picked up a body and started sanding this white polyester off of it, and this beautiful, I don't really see it, but this beautiful ribboning in this wood just started showing through. These stripes are just amazing. And I sanded all the white off of it, spent about a whole day, just detail sanding everything. And I decided I was going to oil it. I wasn't going to put a clear polyester finish on it because I wanted to hear the guitar, hear the wood. It is a monster. This is my favorite player. I don't have near as many guitars as I used to. I've got maybe 30 or 40, but this is definitely one of my favorites.
That's awesome.
I don't have any. I've got guitars that do what they do exceptionally well. I've had several hundred at a time years ago. Just decided that that was just ridiculous.
It's all about quality, not quantity.
Yep.
Yeah.
The
older you get, the harder it becomes to pay for the space to keep all that stuff.
Yeah, I've recently become attuned to that because I've had, I've never had as many guitars as you at one time. I've probably had over 1,000 guitars in my lifetime as a guitar player. But I think the most guitars that I've had at one time is maybe 55 or 60. But nobody needs 31 pickup or 2 pickup Floyd Rose guitars. You don't need that many. What you need is the guitars you need for your toolbox. The ones that you need that don't have. You just get every different type of sound that you need. Every different pickup. Like a P90, a couple of humbuckers, some mini humbuckers, Strat pickups, tellies. Get that stuff. A Jazzmaster, a Jaguar, and maybe 1 or 2 of each of those, so you have a main and a backup. But you don't need 30 or 40 of one style guitar.
Of course, I do have a couple of acquaintances and / clients that will disagree with both of us. There's a fellow that I know down in Florida that has over 1,000 guitars right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I mean, if I could have 1,000 guitars, I'd love to. But do you need them? No.
This guy's collecting. This is one of the guys that goes to NAMM and goes to the Jackson booth and says, "I want to buy everything from the NAMM display."
That's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, just and like all of the Mike Learn painted guitars. I want to buy all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, if I could do that, I probably would rethink my stance on how many guitars I actually needed. But
yeah, well, if you have disposable money, absolutely, I'd be right there with you. Because who doesn't love more guitars? Who doesn't love a new guitar every day, or a couple?
I'm looking at the gear that I've got right now, thinking to myself, I'm 62 years old. What am I going to do? Start a band? Come on, really? Who's moving all this stuff? I'm not.
Right.
It all needs to go away sooner or later. I don't play enough to. I'll go out and sit in with somebody every once in a while, but I haven't effectively played guitar in 33 years. Why would I want to go put myself through that? Okay.
Well, I don't know. I still want to play. I still want to play.
I still want to play too, but I work for people that do it better than I do. So
there you go.
I'm just going to make myself feel bad.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on this show tonight, and thanks for everything. Thanks for being a good friend. I appreciate that you take my calls every time I call you. You're just a wonderful person to talk to. I know everyone in the chat loves you. I can speak for myself and Ty. You've been a wonderful guest, and we can't wait to have you on again. And
thank you so much for having me. I hope we can do it again sometime soon.
Yeah,
and real pleasure. Real pleasure.
Don't go anywhere. Stick around for a little after show. We stay just the three of us for 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm going to say goodnight to everyone in the chat. Thanks for everything, everybody. Thanks for stopping by every week and enjoying the show as much as I enjoy it. It's really a lot of fun. Thanks for all the participation. Thanks to Ben Coombs for being a great moderator.
Yes.
Moderator. And again, thank you to everyone. And on that note, we will see you all next week. We will have David Friedman on from Friedman Amplifiers next week, so check that out. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, guys.